Next station. A whole slice of chicken slicing.
Most of it does turn up by 6:30, 6 o'clock on the dot. They sort of 6 o'clock is the middle time, and then we sit down by 6:30. So I would, and I don't know if we've got a decoration before at all.
There is actually a couple of forms on for it. We're going on most of that.
We've got all the usual suspects. Robin.
But most of them come in from 100.
Yeah, Robin comes from up north, so it'll be more that line.
Oh, it doesn't get well.
Cool.
Hey guys, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. We're just letting some people, let some stragglers creep in. Other than then we'll get started, like I said, in 2 minutes.
So we're live streaming to other people?
We are.
Right. Yeah. We might have to set screen to start or after the start of the meetup if we handle notices.
We'll do the demos at the end.
But for future reference, tell people they've got to be wrong. So,
Hey Tanner,
Yeah.
are you good?
Yeah, I'm ready to go whenever.
Okay, so everybody, thanks for coming to the Server-Side Swift meetup. Second ever international attempt here, and so far nothing's broken. So today we've got Tanner Nelson, who will be talking about Vapor. And Tanner, I'm going to tweet the link out so people may start joining on the off of YouTube. So it is all yours.
Okay, perfect.
Actually, sorry, one last thing. For everybody else, and you guys already may be doing this, if you're not speaking, please go on mute. We learned last time that when we didn't do that, it was really disruptive. So if you're not talking, go on mute. We can do the same thing. Over to you.
Okay. Let me just make sure. Okay, this is recording. Perfect. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. We're going to learn a little bit about Vapor during this, how to get set up, and kind of what it looks like to develop using Vapor, and the tool sets that we have around it. Okay. So this, sorry about that. My laptop's going a little slow. Okay, a little about me. My name's Tanner. I'm an American software engineer with a little over 10 years programming experience. I went to New York University. Those are the languages I know, kind of in the order of which ones I like the most and know the best. This is my website on the left here. Can anyone guess who that is on the bottom? If type it in the chat or something.
Yeah, someone made a comment about Sean.
Okay, perfect. Yep, that's Sean. Thank you, Sean, for hosting this, and thank you, everyone over at TreeFrog, for hosting this and having me here today. Okay. So I'll be showing you guys Vapor, which I created here are a few statistics about it. It was created back in January, so we've been around for about 7 months. We've got a couple of sponsors and donors that have allowed myself and a couple of other engineers go full-time on the project, so we're really thankful for that. We've got a bunch of contributors, 36 to date, that have contributed code to the repository. Almost 50 packages, so those are Swift 3 Linux-ready packages that you could start using to do server-side development today. In all of our packages, we really pride ourselves on the documentation that we put in there and the tests that we put in there, so we think we have a lot of good stuff for you guys to use. We've got a ton of tag releases, almost 500 people in our Slack, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that later, and almost 5,000 stars. But my favorite statistic is how many people are using Vapor so far, and this always amazes us when we see it. Both independent crawlers and the IBM Swift package catalog vote us as the most used Swift 3 package out there. So that means that Swift 3 and server-side Swift is going to have a bright future. So let's get into the demo here. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you guys is, and actually I need to, one second, I need to stop recording my own screen. This is going too slow. Okay, there we go, that's a lot better. Okay, the first thing I want to show you guys is our website. So if you're going to get started using Vapor, this is probably where the first place that you're going to land. And it's just a little splash page. We've got a place here where you can learn with kind of some interactive code, hover around, learn about some of the stuff I'm going to be showing you, learn about the type safety that we have, how controllers work, and of course see how well we do in the benchmarks versus the other frameworks, so all of the non-Swift frameworks down there. So the first thing that you need to do to get started using Vapor is head over to the documentation, and that link's right up here. And we have installation instructions for Mac OS and Ubuntu, and we're going to have installation instructions for Windows coming soon using a Vagrant box on Windows. So those of you that don't have a Mac or a Linux box will be able to use Vapor soon. So I'm on a Mac here, so the first instruction is to go over to swift.org and download the preview right here. You can see I've already done it, so let me open up Xcode here. So now, once this is open, there's just a little bit of configuration to do because you're using a version of Swift that's not the default version. You're going to be using Swift 3. So you can see there's a number right here. Now this is the build number of Xcode that we need to use. So if you go to Xcode, Preferences, and then over to Command Line Tools, which is under Locations, you can see that same build number right there. And I want to simulate what this would look like if I were to change this. So we have a script that you can run to check to make sure your environment is compatible with Vapor. And it's really easy, so let me make this a little bit bigger. But you don't even really need to copy and paste it. You could just type it. It's curl sl check.qtheory.io, and then you pipe that into bash. And if you run this, it's going to check your environment, it's going to check your Swift version, your Xcode versions, all of that, and it's going to tell you if you're compatible or not. So you can see right here, it detected the issue. It said your command line tools are set incorrectly. You need to be using this version, and it's using this version. So I can really easily come over here and set that to the correct version. And now if I run this again, bless you. Now if I run this again, you can see it's giving compatible, so that's awesome. So now that we're compatible, the next step, if we go back over to the documentation, you can see install toolbox, so we can do that. The Vapor toolbox is a command line interface that's going to help you create new Vapor projects and deploy your Vapor projects. So I'm just going to copy this right here. It's very similar to the checking your environment, and let's paste that and then hit enter. And you can see it's going to run the same script that we just ran, just in case you haven't run that previously. It wants to make sure you're compatible first. And then it's going to download and install the toolbox, but I've already done that, so you can see right here I have it. Okay, so now that we have that, we can create our first Vapor project. You can see a list of the commands right here that are available to us, and this CLI is very interactive, so if you want more information about a command, you can just type the command. So you can see right here, this is how you create a new Vapor application from a template. So I'm going to create a new one called hello. And it's going to clone that onto the desktop. So right here it just says type cd into there, and you'll be good. So I'm going to start while I show you one more feature of the CLI. So you can see right here, it always prints out when you ask help on a command, a link to our Slack right here. And if you visit this in your browser, all you have to do is put in an email address, and it'll send you an invitation. You can come join our Slack. And it's a really great place to go if you ever have any questions about Vapor or have any questions really about Swift 3 in general, because we have a lot of nerds in there that are following all of that stuff closely and can help you get set up, even if you're not using Vapor, even if you're using a different Swift 3 package. So that's a great resource to have, and I'd recommend you guys come in there and chat with us. So let's check the progress on this. Just give it a little longer. Oh, I think my poor internet is getting really bogged down with this live stream, but it shouldn't take too much longer. Meanwhile, I can, oh, no, there we go, perfect. Okay, so once that's done, we can the Xcode command right here to generate an Xcode project. I'm going to type Vapor Xcode, and it's just going to make sure the dependencies are fetched, but they already are, so that should only take a second. Oh man, this Google Talk plugin is just killing my CPU right now. Okay, and it's just going to ask you if you want to open the Xcode project immediately. It's done generating, and I'm just going to type yes there to open it. Okay, so let's give this a second longer to load here. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of folder cleanup here. Let me open what the actual folder that it just created looks like. So here's the folder on the desktop. Let me put this a little to the left here. So you can see we have the app folder, and the app folder is where all of your source files go. And the most important one being the main.swift file. That's the entry point into your application. So that's going to be where you do your routing and do all of your initialization. And then in these other folders here, we have your controllers, your middleware, and your models. But we want to start fresh, so we're just going to delete all of that for now. And I'm just going to drag these in here and create folder references, which actually Xcode will be able to do soon. But as of now, we need to create them. And then I'm going to take these, hide them. Put this up here. Okay. So now that we have okay, so now that we have this, let's go into our main.swift file and let's clear out all of the sample stuff in here. If you were creating your first Vapor project at home, you'd want to look through this because there's a lot of really good stuff in there and a lot of really great documentation that explains how all of it works. But for now, we're just going to start fresh. So this is what your main.swift will look like when you first open up an empty Vapor application. And the only thing you need up here is the import Vapor. And Lucas, let me know if you guys can see this font. I'll probably just make it a little bigger just in case. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is create a droplet, and a droplet is a service container, which if you've used a web framework before, service containers are helpful classes that help you initialize and keep track of all of the things you need to make a website or a web application. So the Vapor droplet is going to create a server, a router, a client, a hasher, sessions, cookies. It's going to take care of doing all of that for you and making sure that you have all the dependencies that you need right off the bat. So that's the easiest way to get started with Vapor, and that's the way that we recommend. But that doesn't stop you from going in and customizing things if you want. So if you want to, say, bypass the droplet and you want to create your own server, you can come in here and you can see that you can create your own right here, putting in your own host port, etc. You can do the same with routers and hook all of that up yourself. But for the case of the droplet, it makes things a lot easier, and it also allows you to use Vapor providers, which I'll be showing you a little bit later. So once we have that, we can say drop.get hello. So when someone does a GET request to our application with the URL hello, we're going to go into this closure here. And this closure is going to get the request that was made, which you can name whatever you want. You can call it request if you want, or just REQ. And when that happens, I'm going to just return hello. Now, you can return anything in this closure that's response representable. You can return a response, so if you want to create something custom and set your own headers and set your own response body, you can do that. But you can also just simply return a string, which is going to turn itself into a response by conforming to response representable. I'll drop.serve, and I'm going to come down here. Now, app is the one that we want to run, and right now it's a little annoying because Swift PM generates all of these extra executables that we don't need. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to clear these out, and this will be going away in the future with a pull request to Swift PM. It is currently in progress. So you can just come down and manage themes here, and then select all of these and delete them. We just need hello and app. Okay, so now you can just come down to App and hit Run. And I apologize for my computer going so slow. I don't know if there's any way, if anyone knows how to make this Google Hangout thing take up less of my CPU, that would be much appreciated, but it's currently totally killing my computer and making everything default. Maybe if I minimize it. Give me 1 second to try some more things because I'm not going to be able to compile anything if I'm having all of the CPU going to that. So give me 1 second here. Okay, the command started running here. Let me try switching my resolution to something lower and seeing if that helps us out at all. Can you guys still see me? I feel like Steve Jobs when no one would turn off their Wi-Fi thing. Okay. Yeah, no, that did not change it. Okay, this looks like a lot better. Can you guys still see it? Oh, much better. Okay, yeah. Now it's only taking 39%. I guess it was trying to send all of my pixels through there. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is so much better. Okay, now let's get on with this for real. So we just ran our first Vapor application, and we put one route in here, and it says when we get our application, so a get HTTP request to /hello, we're going to return hello world. And you can see server default starting at port 8080. So let's open that up and use. Go in there and look at that. Let's go to /. Oh, perfect. Hello world came in there. So now let's try something a little more complicated. Let's return JSON. So all we need to do is wrap this in JSON right there, and we can just create a dictionary, so a string dictionary like you're used to in Swift, and we can just say method. So all we're doing is we're creating a JSON enum from the string dictionary message hello world, and then we're returning that. And because JSON is also response representable like is string, we can just return it. So that means that you can also make your own types conform to that and return them however you want. So let's go back over here. Run it, and you can see now it's running JSON. Perfect. Now let's look at something a little more complicated. Let's try to get something from the URL. So oftentimes in REST, you'll have something like get user, have an ID after that. And you'll usually register the route, something like this, and then grab the route parameter and have to match that name or something similar to that. Well, Vapor uses Swift to take a different approach. So self there. And what's that slash, and then it just wants it. And now instead of giving us just a request, it's all that in, which I'm going to. So that's the request, and that's the integer right there. So let's just return that to make sure it's working. Right there. And let's run that. And now let's do users 5. And there we go, it says user ID is 5. This is kind of a weird view, so we can just look at the JSON right there. User ID is 5. And now the cool thing is that since we said int right there, it's only going to accept an integer. So if someone comes over here and they put a string, then Vapor is going to catch that, and it's going to do a 400 bad request that you can then turn into a response of your own. So right off the gate, Vapor is being very type safe and preventing any 500 errors. If you were in something like a JavaScript or a Rails framework right here and you were expecting an integer and someone were passing a string, you'd have to think about that. But Vapor makes it really easy to get the types that you want. Okay, so now let's look at what it's saying down here. It says no command supplied defaulting to serve. So what that's actually doing is Vapor can not only serve the application when you run the executable, but it can also do a lot of other things. You can also write your own commands for it to run. So the default one is to serve, but if we run help, you can see the other things that it can do. So all you need to do is pass an argument. And the default one would be serve here if you want to get rid of that message. But I'm going to pass help just like we did before. You can see here it says usage. It's really long because we're using Xcode and it does a bunch of weird directory stuff. But right here you can see the 3 commands that are available: serve, prepare, and version. And just like the CLI, you can learn more about those if you want. So I could come in here and I could say prepare help and learn more about the command. So this one runs the droplets preparations perfect. That's for using the Fluent database stuff. And let's just check the version. Vapor Framework 0.14. So I'm going to put serve back there. Now you can see we got rid of that warning. Now, where is this port 8080 coming from? So it's binding to port 8080 to run, but we're not really telling it 8080 anymore. Well, that's where config comes into play. So you can see this folder that we dragged in over here. It has 2 files in the root directory. One of which is app and one is service. So this is related to service. So let's look here. You can see we have one entry, default, running on port 8080. So this is where you would configure it. Vapor tries to take all of the things that you would hard code in your application, such as port number, etc., and move them over into these config files so that you don't have to recompile your application as often and recompile it for different environments. You can just change these JSON files and they can plug into your Vapor application really easily. I'm going to show you how to use them in the actual source code in a second, but I just want to show you what changing these values looks like. So if I change this to 8081 and I run it again, you can see that that changed right there. But since this is a dictionary, we can do something even cooler. So let's change that back to 8080. Let's copy this, and let's say we want to run a secure server on port 843 using the TLS security layer. If we run that, you can see now Vapor booted up 2 servers listening on different ports that are going to respond to your request. So this is a great way to support both HTTP and HTTP with TLS at the same time. We're going to delete that now. And you may be wondering what these folders are. Well, if you want to have different configuration for, say, your development server versus your production server, so your production server is probably going to run on port 80, and it's probably going to have TLS and a lot of different settings than your development server would have, which you might want to run on 8080 and use different API keys to get the various services that your application uses. Well, that's what these folders do. So the default environment that Vapor runs in is development. So this file, this app.json file, will override the default app.json file when we're in development. So you can see I put key development key in here. So when we're running in development, this default key is going to get overridden with the development key. So let's try using this. Let's put something in the default. And let's call this my favorite number in there. Okay. And let's create a new route. Right. We're going to return, and we're going to droplet again. And the droplet is going to give us access to that config. And we can access this using the array syntax. And the first thing that we're going to pass in here is the name of the file. So app. And then we're going to do something cool here, which you probably haven't seen before. But since you can subscript you can override the subscripts, we've allowed you to put in here a list of argument variables. So it's a really easy way, instead of doing something that you're probably familiar to, where you do a subscript like that, then you say question mark, maybe cast that as a dictionary again, and then do another question mark, and then access it again. You can actually just come in here and you can use comma-separated paths. So we're going to go one layer farther down now, and we're going to grab that favorite number out of there. And you can see it's just as simple as that, app, comma, and then the next layer down, favorite number. And you can even put, if you had an array, so you had an array of favorite numbers, you could even put a 0 here or a 1 and index into the actual index of the array. And this is all done in a type-safe manner, so you don't have to worry about array out of bounds or anything like that. We're going to take that, and it's going to pull that JSON out, and it's going to give us back a polymorphic object, which is just a fancy way of saying it's an object that you can cast to really any type. And we know that we want an integer from that, so we can say int. And let's fix that favorite number. Okay. So now let's go back over to PA, and let's go to /favorite. You can see it returns 5. And now even if we were to come in here and we were to say, put this as a string, it's still going to return it as the integer that we wanted because we use polymorphic. So that's a great way to take some of the stringly type values that you get on the web, which is really common, and we just provide one really cohesive way to work with turning the values into types that you want. So now let's take this and let's override this favorite number when we're in the development. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to say when we're in development mode, we want the favorite number to be 1337. So I'm going to run that. And then you can see it returns that. But what's even cooler is that you can actually customize this not even through JSON files, but through the actual command line. So if you want to go in here and you want to override that, you can use big flag, and you can say, I want to override app.favorite. And there you go. So you can actually override it at runtime without even messing with these files. So that's a great way to inject a configuration setting or something like that into Vapor in a given environment without having to worry about recompiling it or anything like that. Okay. So now I want to show you localization and request data and how to use those. So let's create a new one. Let's just set that up. So this localization folder works really similarly to config, in that you have some JSON files in here, except it's only going to be one layer, and you're going to use the language prefix right here. So in default, we put a bunch of default messages in here. So a welcome title is the default welcome message. And then in the English file, we override that with an English welcome message. And then in Spanish with a Spanish message. So we can come over here and let's say drop.localization. We want the English welcome title. You can see how I'm using that comma-separated syntax there. So let's run this. And you can see that this isn't an optional because it has that default JSON array there, so we don't need to worry about using an nil listing operator. Let's do local, and we get welcome to Vapor. Let's make it so people can change their language on here. So let's try to get data from their request. And that's super easy to do. So let's let the language, and we're just going to get whatever they as the language right there. And this also comes back as polymorphic, just like the config does. So we could say we want that to be an integer, we want it to be whatever, but we want that to be a string. And now this is going to be an optional, so we can use Swift's guard syntax to ensure that they do pass the language. And here we can throw just a bad request, and this will just give a default 400 response. But we can also provide something a little more custom here and tell them why that error is, so please include only. And then let's just pass that language right there. Okay. So it says, please include a language, so let's do that. Let's say English, welcome to Vapor, Spanish, perfect. Okay, so that's how localization works. Now, this is the public folder. This is really straightforward if you've ever used a web framework before. Just whatever is in here is going to get served if a route is not found. So if we go to /images/Vapor logo, we're going to get the Vapor logo. So we can just see how that works. /images, Vapor logo. And there you go. The Vapor logo. Now down here, the resources is more interesting than the public folder. Here we can store any sort of templates. So we can store HTML or we can store Mustache, and we can have includes. And this is where we can start to make a website or a front-end application. So the previous step here is all returning JSON. That's better for a back-end application. But now with the views, we can start to create more of a forward-facing user interface. So let's take this template.mustache that we have in here from the example. You can see it's including a header, which is right here. That's what that looks like. And it's giving a greeting. So let's say drop.get view, we'll call this, or let's call this welcome actually. And when we get the request, we're going to use that droplet again. Drop.get, and we're going to do This could fail if it doesn't plot, so we have to do try there. And let's run this and see what we get. You can see that we get the mustache still printed out here. And that's because that by default, Vapor only supports HTML. So this is an opportunity to show you how providers work. The Vapor example comes with Vapor and the Vapor mustache provider in it, so we can use that right now. But if you wanted to add a provider, you would go and you would add it to your package, and then go use Vapor fetch to fetch the dependencies, and then Vapor Xcode to generate a new Xcode project that has that. But since that already came with it, we can just import it right what the name was. And now all we have to do is we have to create an instance of the provider. And that's the same across all providers. And followed by dot. Does it keep muting me? Or I think it thinks I'm typing or something. Okay. So anyway. Mustache. Two trained. Okay. So now you can see the include right there. I've been working with MySQL way too much lately. Okay. So you can see the provider. All we have to do is call Vapor mustache dot, and then it's going to give us our possible init method. So we could do an empty init, or we could do with includes. And because we're using an include right here with header, we wanted to pass an include. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's call it header, which is the same name as right there, header. And we're going to say that's an mustache right there. So we just created that, and headers to our droplet. So begin. You can see those are being parsed now. So now let's put some values in there. So all we do is we come down here and we say context, and we just. So let's actually just give. But instead of doing that, we'll just default to English. So we're going to get the language that they gave us, or we're going to default to English, and then we're going to grab out the welcome title from the localization array right there. Let's run that, and back over here, welcome to Vapor, and then if we say Spanish, it doesn't work. Perfect. Oh, language. Here we go. Awesome. And I want to show you, just like the localization works here and the config works here, we can access the request data that same way. So if you wanted to, say, pass an array of users, and you wanted to get just the name of the first user, usually in a framework like JavaScript or Rails, you're going to have to do a lot of if statements, so you're going to have to get some sort of a separate module that makes accessing that easier. But in Vapor, you could just do request.data. Say we have a results array, have a user want to get the third or fourth user, and then get their name. And this is really powerful for both accessing data that was sent to you as a request and accessing data from a response from possibly a different service. So if you consume a different service in your API and they give you back data, this is going to be your best friend accessing that data in there and getting it out. So let me just show you one more tool that the droplet has, and that's hashing. And this is just to show you and how much stuff the droplet has on it and how much it initializes and creates for you. So let's get a string from the input. And if we don't get that, we're going to throw a board.bad request. And then we're going to say, here's the original string, and then here's the hash. Drop.hash.make. It's super easy to hash stuff. Okay, so let's go over what's the URL. Hash string equals, let's do vapor. You can see there's the original and there's the hash right there. Perfect. So now I want to show you guys how to deploy what we've just created here to Heroku and to Docker. So the first thing that we need to do to deploy to Heroku is we need to create just a Git repository for this really quick. So let's just pop over to github.com here. Create a new repository, and we'll call this Hello Tree Frog. Probably make this public or else it'll blow up. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this, and let's go over here, remove any Git folder. I'm going to commit. Push that. Okay, so now that we have the latest pushed up there and our working directory is clean, we can use the CLI. So you can see right here we have Heroku command, so I can learn more about it. We have init and push, so I'm going to run vapor. So it says, would you like to provide a custom name? No. Create one. Okay, Polar Springs. Build pack? No. Let's use the default. And would you like to push this? Okay. And now since we are vapor. Okay, so that's going to start building. And while that's building, because it does, as I said, it may take a while, I'm going to show you guys Docker. And bear with me on this one because I do not know Docker at all, but hopefully we'll see that it's very easy to use the CLI to use Docker. So vapor Docker, we have init, build, run, and enter. So let's run it. I'm going to create the Docker file and ask us if we want to build it now. Okay, that was fast. And would you like to run it? Yes, let's run it. So it prints out the command that you should run. And then we just type that. Okay, they're both building. So while they're doing that, I'm going to show you one more feature with the droplet. And it's groups. So you may have noticed that we're all just at the same level here, but what if you wanted to do something like a V1 group that a lot of APIs have? So there are two different ways you can do this. One is you can create that group. Or something. And we can say drop path. Now anything that we add onto this V1, this is going to work exactly like a droplet. So I could come down here and I could say get version. And this is version 1. So this works exactly like the droplet now, except that all of these are automatically after this prefix. And the other syntax for that is drop.group for this one. You can do these. Let's try this out. Okay, so let's do V1 version. This is version 1, and perfect. That's a good way to group those in there. And you can obviously add as many as you want in here or out here. Let's check the status of our compilations. Those are still building, so I'm going to show you one more thing here. And this is a new site that we just launched. And we noticed that we were getting a lot of tutorials made everywhere, so we made a place where all of them can be found. So we have two sections here, articles and videos, and this is all running on Vapor 0.14, if you want to see. The API and the front end is all running using Vapor. The videos tab is going to be a list of video tutorials we have, a lot of previous talks I've done that some other people have done on here. And the articles, we have a bunch of articles from benchmarks to more in-depth. This is a very in-depth article on how the request data works, down to deploying to DigitalOcean, using the Docker commands, etc. So it's a great place to come if you want to start learning more about how to use Vapor, and the URL is vapor.university. Okay, so it looks like Docker finished first. Awesome. So now if I can figure out Docker, I think you run this, and then let me paste this in. And let's do it. Okay. So you can see right here we just got response hello, and right here you can see we're getting that JSON text. So this is the Droplets IP address right here, followed by 8080, because that's the port that it's bound to, and /hello. And this is being returned out of the Docker container. And Docker is really cool because you can actually use the Vapor Docker enter command right there. And you can come in here and you have your own kind of sectioned off area to mess around with Vapor. And this is what we're going to use to power Vapor on Windows solutions similar to this, so that if you want your development environment, Swift 3, etc., to be separate from what you're working with normally, Docker is great for that. Okay, and our Heroku instance launched, so let's find the URL for that. And let's go check that out. And there we go. Hello world. And you have it right there, up and running. Let's try that hash. There we go. It's all working. So that's it for the demo. If you want to find us, the best way is to Google VaporSwift. That URL right there is the website that I showed you that has links to everything from the documentation to the Slack. So everything you should need to get started using Vapor today. This is how you find us on Twitter, and this is the hashtag use. So I'll turn it back to you guys if you have any questions.
Thanks, Tanner. That was great. So yeah, so it looks like there's one question already from Alexei on chat.
Okay. Is that in the... oh, that looks like Vapor MySQL. Yeah. Oh, wait. Sorry. Okay. Can we can you create resources? So by that, do you mean controllers? Yes, okay. So that's something that I didn't show, but you can, there's a protocol that we have called resource. This might be changing soon, but basically it's your traditional RESTful resource methods here: index, store, show, replace, modify, all of the things that you're used to if you work with APIs a lot. So you can actually just create a class that takes care of all of those, and then on your drop the user's resource right there. And it would work exactly like that, and it would go through and create the 5 or 6 or more routes depending on what you implemented in your resource. Other questions? Or did that answer your question, rather?
Nope. Looks like you answered it well. Oh, another one. Still with Lexi.
Yes, yeah, you definitely can. It's basically just whatever. So this is a protocol right here, protocol resource. So, and these are optional. So if you implement index, then you'll have, get users. But if you don't implement index, then you won't have it. So it's based on what you want to implement out of these. So if you implement all of them, you'll have all of them. If you don't, you won't. So it's really simple.
Any other questions for Tanner? Cool. Oh, yep, we got another question.
Yes, Hayden, you definitely can do that. So if you look at the group here, you can see we have middlewares, path. So those are the 2 things that you can group by right now. So if I wanted to create a group that has, say, an authorization or authentication middleware in here, I could do that, and then all of the routes that I add onto that would pass through that middleware. And you can nest those as deep as you want.
Anybody else? Cool. So Tanner, thank you very much for taking the time, and for everybody else who made time for this, thank you for another question. Right.
Yeah, so we have a package. Let me bring up the package here. We have a package called Vapor TLS, and it works exactly like Vapor Mustache or Vapor MySQL or any of our other providers. And you can bring in TLS support into your application. Let's see. This one has a little bit more documentation on how it works here. But if you bring that in, you can bring SSL certificates right into your application and serve using the configuration I showed you over TLS. But the way that I would actually recommend doing it, because it's just a lot easier than importing your certificates now into Swift, while it's changing at least, is to go through Nginx. So we have a lot of documentation on the Vapor example repository and in the documentation that shows you how to forward requests to Nginx to your Vapor instance running. So you can have Nginx deal with all of the host information routing. You can even have Nginx serve up your public folder if you want, and just totally bypass Vapor altogether for that. And then for anything Nginx can't find, it'll go to Vapor. So you can have all the SSL certificates right there. And Nginx has a lot of ways to plug into all those, I forget what that website's called, to get SSL certificates really easily. But that is what I would recommend for you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Kaden. That's true. Yeah, that works really well. next, and hopefully with Vapor soon, but not yet right now.
Awesome. If there are no other questions, I'm just waiting for the last person to trickle in a question as I say this. If there are no questions, thank you again, Tanner, for sharing that. Just something for everybody who's on this. If there are like the whole purpose of the server-side Swift meetup is to share more, give everybody an opportunity to learn more about server-side Swift frameworks, highlight interesting projects that people are doing, showcase examples across any of the frameworks. So if there are topics that you want to either share or you want to or learn about, let me know. I'm going to put my email up here. You can see me stand up here. Send me an email. Let me know what topics are of interest to you, and incorporate it into the agenda and do more of these sharing sessions down the road. So anyone who wants to share, anybody who wants to learn, let me know.
Good job.
Thank you, Tanner.
Well, thank you so much, Lucas, for organizing this, and Sean for hosting this. Yeah, thanks.
All right, guys. Keep an eye on the server-side Swift meetup page, and as well as the OpenSwift Slack channel. And I'll post more information about upcoming meetups and who's speaking, who's sharing. So thanks, guys. Wherever you are, thank you, and have a great night, afternoon, morning. Take care, guys.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you again.